everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a Sega Saturn game, and that happens to be Bulk Slash, not to be confused with Hulk Smash, and it was developed by CA Productions and published by Hudson Soft, and it was only released in Japan in the year 1997, and it's a third-person shooter involving mechs. And with that said, this game actually kind of reminds me of two other games. So one of them is Virtua on the Sega Saturn, and the other one that it kind of reminds me of is Metalhead on the Sega 32X. Of course I'd say it's more related to Virtua, but it does remind me of some things about Metalhead in a weird way. So now let's start talking about the story, but unfortunately I can't really say a whole lot here because this game is only released in Japan, so therefore I can't really read any of it. Also, I really couldn't find any information on the story itself, but what I can tell you is that you play as a character named Chris Dowley, and as a kid he made a promise to protect one of his friends named Reason. And of course there's a war going on between the military and some big giant ass robots. And that's all I can really find out about this game's story. But that's okay, considering this game is more focused on the gameplay anyways. And speaking of that, let's get moving on to that. So when you first start up, you can select 3 different missions and do them in any order. And after those 3 missions, you can do another 3 missions and do those ones in any order. And before the mission starts, you have to go through the mission briefing. Now normally you'd be thinking, oh crap, I have to read all this? Well, thankfully you don't have to, even if you can't read Japanese, because the display on the map does make it to be pretty easy to understand. So most of the missions consist of going to specific targets and destroying them, protecting a ship from being destroyed, planting some bombs in specific areas, or collecting key cards and reach to the other side. At least those are some of the typical missions. So when you first play, you're in a mech, so if you do the first mission first, you'll see a target thing, and if you go right up to it, it's actually a person. And you can choose to recruit them to become your operator. And you can find an operator on each stage. And what the operator does is that not only do they just help you out and announce certain things, but of course the more times you use them, the more affinity levels up, and their maximum is 3. So if you beat the game of one operator, the ending will be slightly different, and you can unlock some bonus art. So if you want to unlock everything as quickly as possible, it's best to use one operator per run. So if you think about it, it does have a very minor RPG element, but maybe a dating sim would be more like it, but only that you don't get like a shitload of dialogue. Which is another reason why I think this game is more focused on the gameplay than the actual story. And I'm sure you can tell, in this game you literally just have to blow the shit out of everything. So as a mech form you got bombs, and if you're close enough to an enemy you can actually use a melee attack. But depending how high your meter is, you can actually do different types of attacks, where if it's lower you actually do like mini machine guns, or if it's on the higher end you get to shoot out some bombs. But one thing that is really cool about this game is that you can actually transform into a jet. So when you're in jet mode you can actually shoot out a bunch of missiles that can lock onto enemies, and it's also a faster way to get to other places on your map. And this game does have a time limit, but you really don't have to worry about it too much, cause I've never ran out of time in this game and I dicked around with it quite a lot. So right after you complete your objective, before the mission ends, you actually have to fight a boss. And after you beat the boss, then the mission will be over. And that's all I have to say about the gameplay. So in short, it's a mech game where you get to transform and then you also get to shoot out a bunch of shit. And there's also a little mini dating sim thing on the side, but thankfully they at least did keep it to a minimal. Because I'm willing to bet that most of the people that have some sort of interest within this game don't really care about that shit, and all they want to do is just get in the mech and start blowing up everything. So now, let's start talking about the controls. And the controls in this game are really good. So everything is really responsive when it comes to the turning, the shooting, the jumping, the flying, and the button layout for the most part is also really good. But considering that this game is on the Sega Saturn, one thing you gotta keep in mind is that because the system didn't have dual analog, the turning and aiming in this game is mostly done through the shoulder buttons. Now when it comes to today's standards, that may seem pretty primitive, but weirdly enough, I was actually able to get used to it really well. So as weird as it was, I did find it to be pretty easy to get used to. So with that being said, I found that the controls still work really well. So now let's start talking about the other things, like the graphics. So if I say so myself, I still think this is a really nice looking Saturn game. So both uses 2D sprites and 3D models, but the thing that really stands out to me is the bright colors that this game has. I find all the stages in this game are very appealing to look at. Also, a lot of the character designs are really nicely done, and the mech designs and some of the boss designs are pretty awesome. and I really like the art style that the operators are drawn. Now, I have no idea who did the art for them, but the art style, for some reason, kind of reminds me of something that came from Satoshi Yorishihara. Now, I don't think I pronounced his name right, but one thing you gotta know is that he is actually the one that did all the artwork for the Growlancer series, which is definitely an awesome thing. So if this game's art style reminds me of something like that, then that is indeed a great thing. So with that being said, I can definitely say that this is still a very good looking game, even for 1997. So now, as for the music in this game, the music for the most part is really good, but probably my favorite song out of the entire thing would have to be the title screen. I mean, just listen to this. I just have to show you guys this because this theme is just so fucking awesome. So yeah, it's pretty hard to knock that. Also, the song that plays in the opening is pretty badass too. But as for the in-game music, it's still really good, but I don't think it's as awesome as like the opening or the title screen, but it's still really nice sounding. It kind of has a mixture between rock and trance, which to me, I always think that's an interesting mixture. And some of the songs sound really catchy and do fit the game really well. But there is definitely no bad music within this game whatsoever. So with that being said, I really can't think of any complaint about the music, but I just really like it a whole lot. So now, if you want to go out and buy this game, since it's a Japanese only game, your best bet is you're gonna have to import it, and of course you gotta make sure that you have that action replay. But sadly to say, this game is also not that cheap. So the cheapest I've seen it for was $80 for a loose disc, but typically it goes from about $90 to $120, but then you get into the really rich side of things and it goes from like $180 to $275, but of course the one that's $275 is sealed. Well damn, it just seems like that the Sega Saturn just can't catch a break. But if you do want to at least try the game out, you can always just emulate it, but of course with that said, the Saturn emulation is not the greatest, but with this game I think it does work really well. Considering that everything looked pretty fine the way it was, and of course I never had any other really weird issues. So I can safely say that this is one game that does work really good. But no matter which method you're choosing, as long as you're playing the game, then you're doing it right. Because honestly, this game is pretty fucking awesome. So, as for my overall thoughts on this game is, yeah, exactly what I said earlier, it's pretty fucking awesome. Although I guess my only complaint with this game is that the game is pretty short, and I personally would have liked to see more levels, but with the ones that they have here, I still think they are really fun. And as I said, graphics are really good, the music is also really good, and it is a very satisfying game to just go around and just shoot up a bunch of things. But one interesting thing I would like to mention here is that this game was actually shown in a US magazine. Yes, in fact it was shown in a magazine called Saturn Power Magazine, issue number 6. So it's pretty interesting that a game like this that stayed in Japan was actually shown here. Maybe they were trying to release it over here, but it just didn't happen, which is a damn shame. But it's okay, I'm just glad I was able to experience this game because I really enjoyed it a hell lot. So if you want some simple action games that involves mechs, then this is one I can highly recommend. So with that being said, Bulk Slash is indeed a Hulk smash hit. Yeah, that was pretty stupid, but anyways, that'll be the end of this review, so thank you for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.